Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Indie Book Review, where today I am reviewing Edge of the Breach by Halo Scott. Let's not waste any time. Let's get into this, starting with the plot. So, it got two lead characters. It has Kyder and Rune. Kyder is kind of this asshole shit disturber uh, turned psychopathic murderer, and he's got this whole thing where he wants to be respected and feared and become this, big overlord guy. And then you've got Rune, who grew up sort of in a form of poverty, or not poverty. She grew up rich and kind of chose a life of abstract poverty as a part of this gang. I'm not going to get into why or spoil why or anything like that. And there's a lot of this book that I can't really talk about without spoiling. That's just kind of a reality of this book. It's hard to talk about without, unless somebody has already read it. That said, there's some interesting stuff that you get into a bit later, especially in terms of the world building and the characters and stuff like that. In terms of the plot, it's a little more on the difficult side to really explain what the plot is, because it doesn't really have a straight line narrative. It's kind of a sequence of events that leads to one big FU to the big characters, and then shit hits the fan again. And just kind of getting into how Kyder and Rune kind of need each other to really survive. It's hard to really talk about. It really is, without spoiling anything. But all in all, I am going to give the plot a 5 out of 5. Like, it is very well done. It's very intriguing. It definitely kept me interested all the way through. And this is a 500-page novel. Like, this isn't little by any means. So, to say that is pretty good. The characters. The side characters are fine. I really don't have any problem with them. Ella was a little too gross at times. Gennaro was a little too weak at times for my taste. But they were fine. They don't lose any points for their character quirks, basically is what it is. I'm going to concentrate more on Kyder and Rune. Kyder. I had a lot of problems with this character. I don't care that he's a psychopathic maniac who gets off on killing people. I don't care that he became this big mob boss and slaughters everyone who even shows any sort of sign of weakness or humanity in any shape, way, or form. I do not care that Kyder is basically the worst human being that has ever been on the face of the planet. I mean, I'm overselling that quite a bit. There definitely are worse, but not by much. I hated Kyder because he's arrogant. I can't stand arrogant characters. The I'm better than you because blah 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 blah. Where in a lot of times, and in a lot of cases, the arrogance of a character tends to lead up to their eventual humbling, which only sort of happens. He's still definitely an arrogant asshole. And despite being very compelling, especially at the end, we'll get into the ending later, it was just hard to get through his chapters sometimes, because I'm reading him just brag and brag and brag, and I hated it. Could not stand that bragging, I'm better than you mentality. But other than that, he was fine. Rune was a little much at times too, but kind of in the other direction. Rune got a little much at times because something would go wrong or someone would die and she would just shut down. She's just done. She's just gone. And she'd either become the worst person to be around or she would just completely shut down. And eventually a person just goes, okay, girl, get over it. Yes, shit sucks, but you're living in a sort of post-apocalyptic world. You should be used to death by now. Especially losing people who are close to you. It just got a little much. Rune was a little easier to get through, though, a lot of the times, because she would eventually snap out of it. It took a little longer than I would have liked a lot of the times, but she would snap out of it. There is one really interesting thing, though, when it comes to Rune and Kiter, and they are absolute mirrors of one another. They are the absolute opposites attract sort of thing. You know, Rune was born on the winter solstice at midnight, and she's kind, she has compassion, but when things go wrong, she shuts down. She doesn't know how to deal with it. Kiter, on the other hand, born at noon on the summer solstice, is a hot-headed, psychopathic maniac who wants to kill everything while Rune wants to protect them. And, well, there are definitely mirrored characters in other books, and there's a whole lot of other opposites attract style things in other books. This one just did it really well. And, well, it definitely doesn't put any sort of points in terms of character. It does in terms of writing, which I'll get into next. Characters, because Kiter was really hard to get through, and Rune, every once in a while, just had me going, okay, girl, get the fuck over it. It does get a 3 out of 5. Sometimes that's just the breaks, I guess. The writing. The writing is fantastic. It is smooth. It's easy to get through. The characters, well, at some points do speak in kind of janky, disjointed sentences. There's kind of a consistency with which ones are speaking the chunky, disjointed sentences. So you definitely get that idea that this character just talks that way, because nobody else seems to be. And you can kind of get the idea that English might not be their first language to begin with. Those of you who have read the book will know who I'm talking about by now. Other than that, yeah, writing is just straight up really, really good. And is definitely a 5 out of 5. Like, well done. Imagination and research. Wow, the imagination that went into this. So, the world's flooded. Everyone lives in a barren Antarctica. Or at least barren is kind of the impression that I got from the book. And people have these powers that are born based on when they're born. So people who are born in winter are able to create shields. People born in the fall are able to shapeshift. Those who are born in the summer have gravity powers, and those who are born in the spring are healers. Okay, that's really cool. And they have their specific elements that go along with it too, which they really don't get into much in the book, but they do mention it. A lot of the time, and just the general world building is really good. It does lose out on one single point though, and it's because it does mention a lot of modern foods. It mentions stuff like pizza, it mentions stuff like waffles, and ketchup, mustard, and mayonnaise, and for some reason that just pulled me out of the immersion. It pulled me out of the experience. Not to say that these people are well fed or actually able to eat, but it's what they're eating, because it made me wonder how they're making this stuff. Like, this is the last of humanity living on Antarctica, and Antarctica is kind of this wasteland, and even if they're able to get some farmland stuff like that out of it, I'm not really buying that they can get the herbs and spices to create ketchup or mustard, or get the exact ingredients to get pizza. It's just something that really pulled me out of it. Everything else was bang on, stand up, have absolutely nothing negative to say about it. It's just the food stuff that really made me go, what? They have that? That doesn't make sense. And maybe that's just a me thing, but it just didn't make sense to me. Imagining research, I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 just for that, and it's a little thing, really. It's a couple sentences in a 500-page book. And now the ending. I'm not spoiling shit for anyone. Not a little bit of this is getting spoiled. Because this is sort of the big turnaround for Kiter. This is the part that made me see Kiter in a different light. He became a whole different character while still remaining true to himself. I can't say why. But the ending gets a straight out 5 out of 5. Like, this was an absolutely incredible ending. It sets things up for the next book, which I am definitely interested in eventually reading when it comes out. And yeah, ending gets a 5 out of 5. Which means, all in all, Edge of the Breach gets an 8 out of 5 out of 10. This is a really enjoyable book. I had a hard time putting this one down, and to be perfectly honest, I kind of sped through this. I think I finished it in maybe a week, maybe a little less. It didn't take me very long. And I didn't want it to take me very long. I definitely wanted to get through this as quickly as I could because it was just so good. If you get a chance to read this book, I definitely recommend it. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's an 8.5 out of 10. That is definitely nothing to shake a stick at. But that's all I got for you guys. Have a good one.